So if you go to my webpage, and there's a YouTube link for broadcasts, etc. But if you go to my AP US History page and hit AP Review, on this I have a significant amount of stuff on here. There's this teacher, and I'm not saying this is the best history, but it's very quick, concise with the units. He did YouTube videos. Same for this one. I didn't make it as big, so I'll make it quite as good. There's a timeline we did in class. There's more review material here, a bunch of terms, stuff other people did. Here are all the notes I gave you. Here's that note packet I gave you from 91 to 2013. This is a review packet that it has everything in it. So if you click this, it literally has everything. All the stuff on the test. That's a lot of things. And then page after page of also very concise little notes. All right, hey, one more thing. Hey, there's a lot of practice tests here. Most are, you know, but this Learnerator site has a ton of practice tests. They're not the greatest questions in the world. Some I think are kind of worded a little bit goofy. But the point is, if you got a little time, you want to do it on the computer, it just reminds you of things. It brings things up again. And so if you have, for this one, period 1, 1497 to 1607, and so on. So you click pattern colonization, and it has a couple questions like we have done. You can click do them online. Like I said, I think they're a little bit awkward, some of them, but the point is that's just easy review if you want to do it on a computer. There's a link on my webpage, and it goes through them all. And so I just want to show you that first. Next, there are, yeah, I'm glad all of you came. I think we'll get a lot out of this. A lot of people did not come, and that annoys me to no end. And so I will probably yell at them tomorrow. And there's a couple things I'm going to tell you about the test. First off, this is the way they're dividing it up. You guys will come in. Where are you having the test at? Dredge. Yeah, the Intermountain Children's Hospital. So in case anyone, you know, you see those first couple, you should at DBQ and hyperventilate. No, that won't happen. But I'm going to read you exactly what's going to happen. Okay, you got to get there by 7:45. The test starts at 8 o'clock nationwide. Well, they start on the hour, depending. Everybody starts at different time zones, obviously, but 8 o'clock in your time zone. And for the first 15 minutes, then you get all the, you know, all the forms and all that kind of stuff. Now, just make sure you have enough time. And this year, they've changed it a little bit. Now it's kind of like the ACT. You have to sit, record where you're seated, and that kind of thing. It's kind of okay. It used to not be that big of a deal, but they're doing that now. And then, once the test begins, you'll get a booklet, and you'll have 55 minutes to do 55 multiple choice questions. There'll be a short little paragraph or a picture or a political cartoon or something like that. They call it a stimulus, and then 55 multiple choice. And then, yeah.
Can you ever watch these yourself?
Yeah, so you can bring a watch. Yeah.
Yes.
That's probably going to be gone when soon you're going to look stuff up with your watch.
Well, I watch.
And then next, after 55 minutes, you will have 50 minutes to do 4 short answer questions. And the 4 short answer questions will be, there'll be 4 questions, and they'll have A, B, or A, B, and C. So basically a short ID, a mini short ID for each of those letters. So you have, you know, anywhere from, you know, 8 to 12 short IDs, but in 50 minutes. So good 3 cents for each of them. If you know, I don't think those will be any trouble at all, then you get a break. And if I'm reading this right, because this is the first year they've done it this way, you'll get them both together. And so you can, when you're done with the multiple choice, you can go right in the short answer. That's the way it looks like. I might, you know, That's the way it looks like to me. And 10-minute break. If you want to bring something to eat, bring it in a bag so you can go out. You know, I'm sure they'll let you have something to eat at the break. Steak, turkey dinner. Raw ears of corn. A pumpkin. A pumpkin would be good. A pumpkin in a spoon. Can of lard. And then you will have a 15-minute reading period. And in that 15-minute reading period, that is when you have time to organize, read your documents, organize your BBQ. Most of the time will be spent on that. And then you have one other essay. And so any extra time in the 15-minute review period, go and organize that. And then after the 15-minute period, then you can start writing. And they figure you have an hour and a half total, approximately 40 minutes for the BBQ and 40 minutes for the other essay, which actually, with the 15-minute reading period, that should be more than enough time. And that's it. You should be done. Well, and when you're finished, you can leave. You don't have to stick around to the time's over. At least that's what you used to. I hope they can let you do that. Unless you got some new message. And the tests are in the safe right now. I'm just saying, you know.
Can anyone take a sip?
Any questions on that? How many pencils should you bring? 50. All the pencils in the world. Yeah. And then sell them to your classmates.
I write.
Well, we're already done here. And then, oh yeah, bring 2 or 3 just in case. And 2 or 3 black or blue pens just in case. It would really be annoying if one of them breaks. And I know Mr. Furlick will have some extras, but, and about the water, you bring a bottle of water. Eat, you know, at least have it in your bag. And phone, don't have it near you. Because like I told you, I would hate, God, wouldn't that be awful to have your phone rings and he comes and rips your test up and laughs in your face? He'd do it. Please don't make him make that decision because he doesn't want to do it. But technically he's supposed to. Just make sure you don't have your phone. Something's, you know, it's easy to do. Yeah.
Do you know if there's going to be a clock in the room?
There is a clock. And that I'm not sure. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I will talk to him about getting something up to make sure we have the time up. If we can't, we'll get something. We'll figure something out. You're out for 0 through 4. So come back for 5th period. We'll come in here. I'll let you sit down. I'll give you a question and we just start writing. Rhythm. Don't worry about it. For those of you in 5th period AP US history class, don't worry. If your parents actually call you out for that period, I won't be upset at all. I will understand. But make sure you tell your teachers in 1st through 4th what you're doing. All right. Any other questions about that? Okay, so you're doing multiple choice. So you know. If you don't know, what do you do?
Yes.
The first thing you do, if you don't have a clue on a question, put a dot by it. Yeah, start crying, run around, set your hair on fire. Put a dot by it, move on. Don't waste time on one you don't know. Come back and then eliminate. Eliminate the best you can. Leave nothing blank. Answer every question. 4 years ago, they made the change where they quit marking. They used to take points off if you guessed wrong. But now they don't, so don't leave anything blank. Come back, eliminate, and they all the multiple choice. Every sample I've seen, and probably the ones you've seen in your textbook, almost all of them have a pretty basic answer if you can eliminate. And kind of, oh yeah, okay, see where they're coming at. They're not going to be that narrow, I don't think. You know. So we'll do some practice tests. You have those 4 practice tests in your review book. Just narrow it down. And you know what? If you miss one, big deal. Whatever. Move on. The thing is that, you know, if you get 60 or 70% of your multiple choice, if you get over 60% correct, you've done very well. Seriously. So just do the best you can. Don't worry about it. If there's one you don't know, move on. Guess, move on, but eliminate. And hopefully you can eliminate 2. And then you have a really good shot. Short answer, and also for your essay, here's a hint. This is very good advice. You want the advice?
Yes.
All right. So when you read your question, okay, let's say the short answer. You have 4 short answers. And my guess is there will be a good chance one of them you won't be 100% sure on. And let's say it's something about, let me find a good one. I'm going to steal your thing here. And so let's say it goes on. All right, so let's say it asks something about, the short ideas, and ask you about the Kansas-Nebraska Act, 1854. You ask about those events that happened. That's a very good chance you get a little something about it by Stephen Douglas, talk about the Kansas-Nebraska Act. And you can't remember anything about the basic idea. It happened sometime in 1854. I'm sure you know that because it says of 1854. Right? And this is one of those letters you simply don't know. What do you do? Now what do you do? Cry, yes. No! What do you do? Huh? Yeah, pretend you didn't quite understand and answer the question you would have wanted to answer. Answer as close, find something you know as close to the topic you can and answer that. Yeah. If you don't know the question, answer the question you would have liked to answer. That's in the same area. Answer something close. Give the person reading your essay a reason to pass you. Give them a reason to give you points. So hopefully they'll sit there and think, God, they missed this thing, but they understood this. Did a good job. You might not get full credit, but you'll get something. Hopefully that won't happen very often. But if you're not sure, answer something close. It works. It does. They want to give you good grades unless they're a psychotic. Let's hope we get the psychotic graders. But they want to give you a good grade. Give them an excuse. You notice I did not tell you this until we're basically done. I did not tell you this at the beginning of our class either. Yes, Ed.
Oh, no, you answered my question.
Yeah. It might not work, but it's better than putting nothing down. And do not write down, I don't know. Yes, people have done that. There's a whole page of funny answers that AP readers have. I don't know. It's something stupid. But let me tell you about myself. And this person wrote a whole essay about themselves. I thought that was pretty fun. And so if it's, let's say it's Kansas-Nebraska. You're not sure what it is, but talk about the ideologies in North and South. Talk about the Compromise of 1850. Talk about the Dred Scott decision. Talk about the creation of the Republican Party. Stuff like that. It's not perfect, but it gets you something to give you some points. Don't just say, I don't know. Or I'm sure something happened. Give them a reason. All right. Any questions on that? It should be fun. I need that. I'm too old. I never had a kids. It would be unfair to you. And too much fun for me. No, it's going to be good. But I'm not kidding. If there's one of those you're not sure of, don't let it. I'm not bothering you. I know it's easy for me to say. Just be confident you know your stuff and move on. And there's always been some question before it's like, what the heck are they thinking? All right, let's go and take out your review list. I will answer any question on these. I will go through and explain it. Now, when you write those, think about ways to put in your own handwriting, but not only that, also think about what it relates to. Think of something else it relates to. So you always have that in your mind. And if you take a little bit of time to do that, then I will go through it. Why? Because now you won't know what you need. Okay, well, get it down and then figure out what you. So we got everyone else got it? Are we good? All right, I will be glad to answer questions. No questions? All right, well, hey, thanks for coming in. I'm hungry. No, what's your question?
I would make 18 1840s to 1860, antebellum reform, and Hudson River School. Something that.
Okay, this is the AP Euro review list. It ain't on there. So what page is it?
7.
Page 7. All right, let me get to it real quick. All right, so the Second Great Awakening, is that what you said? No, antebellum reform. And this was a reaction to the Industrial Revolution. And antebellum means before the war, so 1840s to 1860s. And this was the time when there began an idea of, or some of the reform movements would be like abolition, the abolitionist movement, reforms in education to provide public education, the beginnings of the women's rights movement, which we have Seneca Falls down below, also like prison reform. And so the idea is all these changes from the Industrial Revolution would trigger this idea that we need some kind of reform. And the Hudson River School, that's a school that was for artists, and it really showed a change in art to show a more kind of a romantic vision of the United States and kind of fit in with all the changes by the Industrial Revolution. And we're back to the idea of kind of the West and the mountains and natural aspects of the country's changing dramatically. So it's a reaction to the Industrial Revolution. I don't think I have any extras in here. Brass, do you have yours either?
No.
Is it safe? Yeah. Uncontaminated?
Yeah.
You don't have one either? Who doesn't have one? Well, you get a share. You can look off one. Jeez. Who else? All right, here we go. Do another one. Yes.
The Anaconda Plan.
Anaconda Plan. Page 8?
Yep.
All right. That was Winfield Scott's plan that McClellan, the North, would eventually use. And the idea was to use a blockade at the South.
What year?
1861? Is that right? 1861 it should be? Yeah, it's right below the 1861. Because if I put whatever the date is right above it, that is the date for all those local figures in the next day.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So, Anaconda Plan, and it was blockade of the South, with naval blockade of the South, take the Mississippi River, and then attack into the heartland of the Confederacy, including Richmond. And the thing about this is not only the blockade would be an example of total war, but it meant that when the North adopted it, it's not going to be a short war. It could be a long one. What's long? You know, nobody was thinking as long as it would go, but it wouldn't be the 90-day war that everyone thought. Okay, is there another one? I've got to make sure I'm broadcasting this. How many people are watching? No one's watching us. You. Yes.
Page 7, 1849.
1849, that gold was discovered in California, Sutter's Mill. And actually it was discovered in 1848, but it would trigger the California gold rush in 1849. And so many people came to California that they had to decide right away about slavery. Right away. They didn't have time. And most of them didn't want slaves. So that would help lead to the Missouri Compromise. Not Missouri, the Compromise of 1850. Yes. Yes.
The Johnson Presidential Reconstruction Plan.
Oh, okay, that's on page 9.
Yeah.
And when you ask them, yeah, just say page number 2 so we can make sure we all get there. Okay, so when President Johnson, who was a Democrat, a Southern Democrat, replaced Lincoln, he kept his version of Lincoln's 10% plan and called it was called Presidential Reconstruction. And basically what it was, if 10% of a rebellious state pledged loyalty to the country, made an oath, they would get amnesty and the country would be allowed back into the Union. So 10% pledge a loyalty oath, they would get amnesty, the country, or the state would be allowed back into the Union. But what happened was, all these states did it, and they sent like the same old Confederates right back to Washington, D.C., like nothing happened. And they were called Dixiecrat governments. Dixiecrats. They're basically like the old Confederates were back in. And they set up a bunch of laws called black codes. And this is going to get into a fight with the Northern Republicans, lead to the Reconstruction Act of '67. Oh, Freedmen'sboro? That's really the only thing that was created for freed slaves, the Freedmen'sboro. And it was designed to provide education and aid to freedmen. Many of the Northerners who went south were called free, were part of the Freedmen'sboro. But that's all they got. Former slaves never got any money, land, anything for what they had gone through and the riches they got for other people. All they got was their freedom. To this day. Yes, Melissa.
One right below that, Hiram Rebels.
Hiram Rebels, the first black, a freedman, who was elected to the United States Senate. And so, big symbolic one. And what's amazing was he took Jefferson Davis's old seat. Yeah, I think that's pretty amazing. He one term, and then the Reconstruction governments, or when they ended his time. Yes.
Page 6, 1840 log cabin.
1840 what?
Log cabin.
Oh, log cabin. And that's when William Henry Harrison went up, the Whig went against Martin Van Buren, the incumbent Democrat. And this was one of the first campaign that's like a modern campaign, where they portrayed William Henry Harrison as kind of like an Andrew Jackson, even though he didn't support the same policy. They made him seem like Andrew Jackson. And they said he grew up in a log cabin, and they gave all this cider to convince people to go to vote Whig. So they avoided the issues and just pushed image. And Harrison was elected.
Who did you say was the Democrat?
Martin Van Buren. The little magician. And so they avoided all the big issues like the Industrial Revolution and the panic in Texas. The Whigs just said, I don't know. I don't think they can do it. That's what Tippecanoe and Tyler did. Any other ones? Yes, Deb.
Everything from page 20 to 22.
Doesn't work. Another one. Yes.
1861.
Nice try.
It's on page 8. It's CSA.
Oh, okay. 1861. So South Carolina was the first state to secede, and eventually the Deep South would all follow, and they would form in 1861 the Confederate States of America, and pick Jefferson Davis as president. And the big thing to remember about that is yes, they feared Lincoln. But the big thing was they thought is that Lincoln would create a strong Republican Party in the South. And if they had a Republican Party in the South, it would be like an enemy within, so they'd be vulnerable. And then King Cotton diplomacy, that was the South thought Britain would join the war to get cotton, so they embargoed Britain. They didn't trade cotton for a full year, thinking that Britain would enter the war to get the cotton, and it backfired miserably. It was a disastrous policy. Disaster. Cost them a year. By the time they started trading, the blockade was gone.
Seneca Falls, Mont San Anthony.
That's on 7?
Yes.
I hate it. Oh. I just noticed this. I got to make that change. Right above it says Republicans womanhood. It's supposed to be Republican womenhood. You see right above Seneca Falls? It's supposed to be Republican womanhood. All right, let me do Seneca Falls. Seneca Falls was kind of the culmination of the first, or the climax of the first women's rights movement. And men and women, a lot kind of got to start with the abolitionist movement, went there to declare equal rights for men and women. Seneca Falls was the first women's rights convention in the world. And it came directly from the Industrial Revolution. And the leaders were Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Lucretia Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And soon after it, probably the most tireless fighter for women's suffrage or voting rights was Susan B. Anthony. She was very young when the Seneca Falls happened, but Susan B. Anthony believed that the best way women are going to get equal rights is if they can vote. Because if they can vote, then they can change laws. Politics, well, equal rights is politics. That's the only way. And that came from the Industrial Revolution. Do I need to explain Republican womanhood? We okay on that? Okay, David.
Compromise of 1850, like right below it.
Yeah, that's kind of the big one. California wanted to come in as a free state, because so many people went there because of the gold rush. So the Compromise of 1850. And what happened was, originally, President Taylor was going to let them all come in as free states. California and New Mexico Territory, the massive New Mexico Territory. And Southern fire eaters said, we'll leave the Union. This means war. And Henry Clay came up with a compromise that failed. But then Stephen Douglas, the little giant, broke up the compromise into bills that could pass. For example, California being free. Do you remember popular sovereignty? You remember that? Popular sovereignty in Utah and New Mexico. And then I have it up there so I wouldn't forget. The fugitive slave law that basically forced people in the North to return runaway slaves. Remember that's the one where you had to join a posse and judges would be paid $10 if they found a fugitive to be a slave, $5 if they weren't. So it looked like it was pretty. And settled the Texas border issue. And lastly, no slave trade in DC. Northerners, at first there's rejoicing, but Northerners hated the fugitive slave law. And a lot of them passed personal liberty laws, which basically said we don't have to follow those fugitive slave laws. And the big thing about those personal liberty laws is that Southerners were furious. Southerners said, see, I told you, everybody in the North is a what? What kind of person? A John Brown. You're an abolitionist coming to cut our throat in the middle of the night. So both sides were really mad about that. Well, that's a lot of stuff in there. And you know the best part is I gave you virtually no room. And so what I want you to be concise, you know, I know. Unless you should use an entire notebook.
No, just the last.
David.
Kansas, Nebraska Act.
I already went over that, didn't I? Oh, no, that was short answer. Kansas, Nebraska. Okay, if you don't know the Kansas, Nebraska, talk about that.
What page is that?
7. Kansas, Nebraska. Stephen Douglas wanted a transcontinental railroad, northern routes for Chicago. But to get that to happen, they had to organize the territories. And so Southerners said, organize it, but allow slavery. And so Douglas made a deal with them and passed the Kansas-Nebraska Act, which repealed the Missouri Compromise. It repealed the MOCOP and said popular sovereignty in Kansas and Nebraska. Popular sovereignty. And what this did is, this arguably started a civil war because it led directly to bleeding Kansas, where you get free soilers and slave state people into Kansas, create the Republican Party, and the Whig Party disappeared after this. Kansas, Nebraska would be the trigger of war. And remember, the war, different ideologies about slavery in the territories. Don't forget that, slavery in the territories. It's not slavery, it's slavery in the territories. And Republicans, if they get power, will get rid of slavery in the territories and then spread. Yeah.
So about the Kansas, Nebraska, was the Gadsden Purchase part of that?
Actually, the Gadsden Purchase, I don't think I even have it on there. But the Gadsden Purchase, in a way it was, and the Gadsden Purchase was purely, that's basically southern part of Arizona, and that was purely done for a southern route of the Transcontinental Railroad. And so it is indirectly related. basically what it is that Southerners are saying, see, if you don't allow for slavery or popular sovereignty, we can do that Southern route. I don't think there'll be a question on the Gadsden Purchase, but there might be. And that's actually a really good bit of outside information. Yeah.
The last one on page 9.
Oh yeah. W.B. Du Bois. I know it's Du Bois, but in the United States it's Du Bois. And Booker T. Washington. And these were two of the leaders in the African American community at the turn of the last century. And they had two very differing points of views. Du Bois started the NAACP and believed that blacks, in fact, everybody but blacks, should fight for equal rights. We have to get equal rights, economic, political, legal rights. Where Booker T. Washington was different. Washington believed that blacks have to accept that they are second-class citizens and fight for a better economic situation. So accept second-class citizenship. All right, now I'm gonna go shut the door. Who is coming in? Oh, good thing we left the door open. That means actually have to go shut the door. When I mean that, I mean I was gonna also shut the door. Do you mind? Tuesdays at 6:30.
I thought
We went Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was.
Yeah, I can't go all Wednesday. Taylor can go all Wednesday. You want to set it up?
Sure.
All right. Where do you want it on Wednesday?
Pizza Hut.
I've tried. Every place I've tried outside of like this, it just doesn't work. It just really doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
It sounds great. Oh, that's fun. Let's post it. Oh, no.
Let's have like a map of like isolated places, 30 miles out.
And when the worst thing they ever did is right. So did we get to what did you ask? Oh, Booker T. Washington. Yeah. They think Booker T. I was laughing at back.
That's they had a fight for economic rights.
Yeah.
What Washington said.
Yeah, Washington. Accept you're second-class citizens, but fight for better jobs. And by the way, which one do you suppose would be invited? Thank you. Oh, I don't know. It's a nice pin, isn't it? I had to find something to jam in there. Which one do you suppose would be invited to the White House? Washington. Yeah, Washington. Why it's very much like Washington. So obviously Du Bois is much more confrontation. You go to the treaty for sign, demand rights, that kind of thing. Is there another one? David.
1801 to 1835, Martial Court and Midnight Justice.
Oh, that's a big one. Oh, page 5, the Martial Court. Yay, Martial Court. Marshall was the Federalist judge appointed by Madison, and the Midnight Judges when Madison. Not did I say Madison?
Yeah.
I meant John Adams. I meant John Adams. And the Midnight Judges were a bunch of federal judges that were appointed just before Adams left office. You know, judges are for life, and so these federal and the Republicans were furious. Jefferson even tried to have them impeached. But the Marshall Court was very nationalistic, pro-strength of government, the federal government over the state government. And there are a number of court cases that are going to be very, very important. But the ones we have to get are Marbury versus Madison, one of the most important court cases, and that would give judicial review. Judicial review. Dartmouth versus Woodward, the sanctity of contracts. That contracts are sacred and government protects contracts. Help big out for big business, by the way. McCulloch versus Maryland, and that reinforced the idea of implied powers. The government can set up a national bank. States can't tax the bank because power to tax is power to destroy. And lastly, Gibbons versus Ogden, which is implied, interstate commerce. Interstate commerce. And so these are really important court cases. Yes, Melissa.
1809 to 1810, the non-intercourse act and Atkins bill.
Makings Bill number 2, yeah. I'll give everyone a sec. Any questions on the court cases? We got those? There's always, at least in the past, there's always been questions on the martial law. Somewhere. Or they were, you know, it might be different now, but that's a big one. Okay, so, non-intercourse act. That would be passed under President Madison, and it said that the United States will not trade with any belligerent. No country at war, the war is going on in Europe between France and, well, Britain and France. And that would try to alleviate the problem of Jefferson's embargo. It didn't work. And so the Makings Bill number 2 would be passed in 1810. And it would say the U.S. will trade with whichever country respects American neutrality. Whichever, Britain or France. And what happened was, France kind of tricked the United States. That Cador letter. And the U.S. ended up embargoing Britain, and that was the end of the War of 1812. My mind is frozen. They'll come back to me, hospital. The letter right before the Spanish-American War. Delome! Aaron.
No, I was waiting for
Oh, that's, just go ahead and leave. No, you've asked Zoom and Megan.
Page 11, 1906, the Hartford Act.
Oh, yeah.
Page 11, oh, no.
Where are we at here? Hepburn Act, 1906. And the Hepburn Act strengthened the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, to give more regulatory power to regulate railroad rates. You know, the ICC didn't have the power to really enforce it. The Hepburn Act gave it more power. And until until President Carter's term, the Hepburn Act was the law. That's an example of progressives wanting more regulation, thinking that was the best way to alleviate the problems of capitalism so there won't be a revolution. Is there another one? Like 40 people have their hand up. Okay.
Okay, the second grade, page 7. Second grade awakening.
You didn't start with the page number first, so next question. Okay, I gotta make a stand.
And then like Benny and Norman.
uh,
All that.
where are we at here?
It's like, it's
Oh, okay. The Second Great Awakening was a very evangelical religious awakening because of the Industrial Revolution. You know, Industrial Revolution was bringing all these changes, and the Second Great Awakening was a reaction against the science and the wage system. And Charles Finney was one of the leaders of it. And he would be best known for these very much fire and brimstone speeches and these big camp meetings where people would come out. And the big thing about the Second Great Awakening, it was very emotional. It wasn't so much of what's exactly and precisely written in the Bible. It is more like the way they make you feel. Finney was called a charismatic. And that's how he got people to follow. It's a different style of evangelical religious. And the burnt-over district of New York was an area, kind of a hotbed of all these, of the Second Great Awakening. And a bunch of new religions and sects started out in the burnt-over district. The best known are the Mormons. Started by Joseph Smith. And they would go to Missouri and then eventually Illinois. And in Illinois, what would happen? Who's their leader? You remember?
Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith, yeah. And Joseph Smith would be murdered, and eventually they would go to Utah under the leadership of Brigham Young because they have a different view on the divinity of Christ, and so they were not considered to be Christians. Okay, is there another one? I don't have to go to that very quickly. Yes.
The same page, new immigration, nativists, and know-nothings.
Okay, new immigration, nativists, know nothing, page 7. The new immigration, the big wave in the 1840s, and it was significantly more Catholic immigrants. Ireland, mostly because of the potato famine, the potato blight, but also a lot of Southern Germans who were Catholic. And this is different than the mostly Protestant immigrants from Britain before. And this would trigger nativists, this anti-immigrant feeling. And the natives had a combination of being intensely anti-Catholic. Remember they called them anti-papists? I'm sorry, they hated this papist influence. But they were also worried about the economic issue, that these new immigrants would lower wages and take their jobs. And in 1856, the nativists would have their own political party called the Know Nothings, from the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner. Technically, they're the American Party, but everybody called them the Know Nothing Party. And this was an intensely anti-immigrant party that did fairly well in the North and the South. And then, so it gives you an idea of the nativist view. So you see nativists today, hasn't really changed. It's kind of another continuing thing with very much the same arguments, partially cultural and kind of prejudice, partially economic. Is there another one? Are we done? Yes.
The Citizen Gane.
Citizen Gane. Citizen Gane is right in the middle, 1793. And Citizen Gane, he was a Frenchman, and they got rid of titles, so that's why citizen, meant equality. He immigrated to the United States during Washington's second term. And what he tried to do is try to get Americans to support the French Revolution. Right at that time, virtually everybody in Europe was attacking France. And so he was trying to get support. And this angered a lot of Federalists, the beginnings of the Federalist Party, kind of the nativist view. We don't want these crazy revolutionaries coming. Which, by the way, the same thing would happen in the 1920s. These strange sounding names were Bolsheviks. That would help lead to the Alien and Sedition Act.
So he was trying to get support for the French Revolution.
Yeah, French Revolution. He was trying to say the U.S. naturally should support the French Revolution because it's against tyranny, and we supported you in your war. Yes.
Right below that was Fallen Timbers.
Battle of Fallen Timbers, and that's 1794. And the Battle of Fallen Timbers was a huge American-U.S. victory in Ohio, where a coalition of tribes would be defeated by the United States Army, Mad Anthony Wayne. So a resounding victory. And that would lead to the Treaty of Fallen Timbers that divided up the old Northwest. The U.S. got basically Ohio and a little bit of other states. The old Northwest is, what did I say? Did I say the Treaty of Fallen Timbers?
Yeah.
The Treaty of Grenville, thank you. That's what Amber's looking at like. What the hell are you talking about? The Treaty of Grenville. And it said, and then the tribes would have basically the western part of that forever. And very quickly, the United States broke that treaty. And that would lead to the most important of the Indian battles to begin. But Fallen Timbers is it's one of the biggest. Yes.
Page 13, 1923 Teapot Dome.
And that's the biggest scandal, Teapot Dome, so everyone can find that. Page 13, Teapot Dome. The biggest scandal of the scandal-filled Harding administration. And that's when Albert Fall, the Secretary of the Interior, sold off American naval oil reserves, basically for nothing. Teapot Dome, Albert Fall. The big thing about that one is the biggest scandal of the Harding administration. And it kind of showed this conservative view of government, that government is there to enrich ourselves. Shouldn't it? But this would be the biggest scandal. Teapot Dome is kind of these caves under this weird looking mountain that kind of looks like a teapot. Or like a teapot. They just pump oil in it. Oil reserves, Albert Fall. It's the biggest scandal of the Harding administration. And it blew up literally just after Harding died of his heart attack. Actually, in a way, kind of felt coolish, so he can kind of come and act like I'm the reformer. This means reformer. Is there another question? Yes.
Page 10.
I gotta go all the way back to page 10. Which one?
It's under 1870 to 1900. Mother Jones with Knights of Labor.
Oh, so I have Knights of Labor, collective bargaining. Mother Jones was one of the most famous labor organizers of that era. And she was in many ways probably a socialist, maybe even an anarchist. And she believed the only way that workers are ever going to have right is to organize. So she would be just famous for going places to places, allied herself with the Knights of Labor and then the IWW, Mother Jones. So just a very famous labor organizer. And obviously Mother Jones, because the idea is that she saw the workers as her children. Any other ones? Yes.
1892.
Yeah, and yeah, the bottom of page 10, the Homestead Strike, and everyone calls it the Homestead Strike, even though it really wasn't a strike per se, but they almost always call it that. And that is when Carnegie shut down his steel mill in Homestead, basically he locked out, it's called a lockout. He locked out the union members there to break the union. And the union fought back when he tried to bring in scabs. And that triggered a big fight as the union tried to preserve them because Carnegie wanted to cut their wages. And eventually what would happen is anarchists tried to kill Carnegie's man there, Henry Clay Frick, tried to knife him, and that turned public opinion against the union because that kept to the bomb-throwing anarchist thing, and Carnegie broke the union. He broke the union. And so that's a classic example of labor or, companies who do whatever it takes to break the union. Cut the wages by 25% and build them an opera house. You have no money, but you got an opera house. Page 8, the Homestead and Morrill Act. Everyone find that? You should already. Homestead, this was passed during the Civil War. Republicans get this passed because 11 states are on Homestead and Morrill Act. And the Homestead Act gave everybody it allowed anyone to have 160 acres as long as they improved it in 20 years. They got a 160-acre farm. They would double that when 160 acres wasn't big enough. And then the Morrill Act they're called land grant colleges. And it'll take the money from the sale of federal land to build state universities. That part of their charter would be to help with agricultural growth or agricultural studies. What is the land grant college in Montana? Yeah, Montana State. Almost every state university now is pretty much a land grant college.
And that's their big land where?
In the west.
In the west?
Yeah, in the west. Because almost all the land east of the Mississippi is already claimed or in Texas. In fact, Lincoln's slogan was, every man gets a farm. Yeah. It's kind of funny, everyone thinks about slavery in the Civil War, and his slogan was, every man gets a farm. Yeah.
Page 8, habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus is that constitutional right that everyone gets a trial. And what Lincoln did is, because of the Civil War, he personally took away that right and had mostly men arrested for their pro-Confederate leanings, like the mayor of Baltimore, for example. So technically violating the Constitution. Later on, Congress would go back and give him kind of, after the fact, give him that authority, but Lincoln just did it. Took away or superseded the Constitution. Copperheads were they call them peace Democrats or pro-Confederate Democrats. The most famous Copperhead was Clement Vallandigham. Now that's one of those, I can't imagine they'll ask a particular question with Clement Vallandigham. Actually, it sounds just like a vowel, land, ing, ham. Yeah, but what a great little tidbit to put in. If you can remember that one, if they ask you a question, that person reading is going to go, wow, this person knows how to spell Vallandigham. Yeah.
Page 6, the terror notification. And Calhoun.
Ah, Calhoun.
Very top.
Yeah. I don't want you to forget. 1832, there was a reduction in a tariff, but not enough for Calhoun. And so Calhoun used that tariff for 1833. South Carolina nullified the tariff, said they would not obey the tariff. And Calhoun's idea wasn't so much against the tariff, it was he wanted to unify the South into like a pro-slavery party. He thought the rest of the South would join in nullification. But President Jackson stood him down. Jackson got the force bill passed saying they will enforce the tariff with military force, and got a compromise tariff too passed. And no states followed Calhoun, or no states followed South Carolina. And so nullification failed. And the big thing about that is Calhoun would spend his whole life he thought he had to end the war. The only way to avoid civil war was to unify the South. The problem is, with nullification dying here, the only other option is secession. And so it saved the Union, undoubtedly, but it made it more radical too. Is there another one? Well, we've gone through a lot. How about two more, take a break? Sound good? Because we got another 4 or 5 hours to go.
You're kidding.
Fill out the entire packet.
I would cry. Yes.
I'm not saying panic.
Panic and Specie Circular. The Panic of 1837. And the Panic of 1837 was caused by two big reasons. First off, speculation or speculative bubble in land sales. Land, the value was going up. So the speculative bubble, and Nicholas Biddle, the head of the Bank of the U.S., was just the question right above it during the bank war. He purposely deflated the currency, causing deflation. So he took money out of circulation. So greatly destabilized the economy. President Jackson, to stop the land speculation, passed what's called the Specie Circular. And the Specie Circular said land can only be purchased with specie, gold. And when that happened, the bubble burst. Combined with the deflation that was already going on, financial panic. An absolute economic disaster, where banks shut their doors, mass unemployment. Nobody really knew what to do. President Van Buren is going to get blamed for this. You see a lot of people blaming Jackson, but Biddle probably more than anything. It was just, you know. Great.
The Hartford Convention on page 5.
Hartford Convention on page 5, 1814. That's when when New England Federalists got together to say they're against the War of 1812. And they basically threatened to nullify the war, saying we're not going to get involved in the war anymore. This Southern War. They also said they didn't want, presidents had to be from different states. They went some other things, but the big thing was against the war. And the thing was, the war ended before anything could come out of this Hartford Confederation, or Hartford Convention. But because the Federalists were there after the war, this basically killed the Federalist Party. It made the Federalists seem unpatriotic. And they would die. It would be the end of the Federalist Party by 1820. Ironically, Hartford Convention, that thought process would lead directly to Calhoun wanting to do it, and it's for a totally different reason. One more question. You want to take a break? Let's take a break. 5 minutes, so get a drink, come back, we'll do a little bit more, then we're done. Sound good? We've gone through, how many have we done? Does this help?
Yeah.
Everyone, thanks, Zach. Oh, you do? Let me, just a sec.
And then
Well, I'll go look that up and see if I can do it. Thank you. That's really cool. Oh, you have to go? Or we're gonna just throw it back on. And the thing is, I'm also gonna go at lunch. And that's but yeah, that'd be fine. I got this whole. Okay, just ask. Just remind me. Third period. Okay. Yes. Oh, 1991.
No, I don't like weird headlines.
Yeah, let's see. I can
Okay, I told pictures that I was tan. I was like, oh my God, when I was in California, I got like really tan because I'm not like super sunburned. Yeah, which is basically like this.
You're in wrestling, right? How was your season? It was alright. I had to stay in place now. I got a concussion tournament after that.
I don't like
Yeah, just read on water.
After that's it.
We just study out. Yeah.
But he mixed it in with another move so it looked legal.
You think he would just give you a pass?
Didn't I get judged for that? Yep. I had that little.
And tomorrow I will be here at lunch if you have any questions. And what are we doing after school?
Tomorrow?
We've got to have such an important meeting after school at 2:40. It's so important and life changing.
Let's do it.
Have you accomplished some big things going to those?
You have no idea. It's I can't even describe it. I can't even.
Is that real?
Yeah.
I'm not a fan.
Wait,
What are we gonna get out to in class?
Originals is the
I'll get as absolutely as much time. Then after that, I'll do it in the study
Yeah,
session.
state is
Maybe at lunch, I'll just fill in many blanks.
So on Thursday, will you just?
Actually, I'm gonna try Tuesday. I'm gonna try to get done as much as I can. And then my plan is most likely Wednesday and Thursday we're doing practice sessions. And the thing is, as long as I get the meat of the test goes through 1973. And so the big thing is I thought I'd get a little bit further, but everything, it always takes longer than I think. And to be honest with you, it's my fault. Sometimes I think it's just so interesting, I just want to go too much on it. I can't help
So
it.
if I'm on Thursday, will I make it?
I'll give you a practice.
I called my first time.
Just remind me, I'm just a paper thing with you.
Above what my because it was 32.4 and then I got 34.6. I did like a round. Yeah, well, like they were
Oh, I have it, but I can't because I was writing last time.
Why do people keep?
super high? So I was like, feel it so much.
So I was writing here. And then I got a grant.
Oh! Tuesday's the last day for Teacher of the Year nomination.
But the second time I was like that part behind the word. So I just felt like
So I gotta start paying more attention. Angela, that's one thing about the garage. Everyone's all look for that stuff, and they never tell you what it is. What's here? 3 old canteens,
Yeah. But one of them was like a really weird French one. It had like zebra striped design on it. It was weird, but you could tell it was old looking, so it must have been something back to shit. But they were cool stuff.
It's what easy. I can speak my stepfather who does that. He finds things and sells them on eBay and makes it.
I was talking to my mom about doing that, but she's like, yeah, no, because I don't have the money for it. I said, hey, you buy it for me, and I'll give you part of the cost. So she,
Because if you can fix things, because most people can't fix them like me. What's that? Yeah, I don't know all the details, but I know it came from bootleg. It started from bootleg. So, you know, it's the same people who were bootlegging in the 1920s and 30s. And then especially after World War II, when they came back, that's when they started the racing. Yeah, it started, but the whole start of it was bootleg. And the big thing was is after Prohibition ended, they would still, you know, all these states had these really just incredible. But I don't know, that's the only, you know, I'm not a, some people love it, I'm not a big race car fan. But you know what, people like it. Yeah. Would he never do that again? Let me get a drink. This is so cool. Have you seen the Havana banana drink? I'm thinking about opening these at the end of the year, but they. Oh, the orange one. That's it's a terrorizing taste. It's nuclear bomb orange. But obviously, Stalinade is the best. All righty then, let's do a few more. Let's do a few more. I will go through as many as possible, and I will try to get through as many. I will figure out a way to make sure you get all of them. I'll try to go through as many. I know we're going to run out of time, but as many up to as recently as possible. That's why I gave you that 1991 to 2013. And if you go through that, I think that pretty much covered everything you need. When did the test cut off? The test cut off? Well, technically it goes up to 2012, but only 5% of the questions are going to be beyond 1980. Actually, it's less than that. I think it's 2%. And none of the essays supposedly are going to be totally about that. So they might ask you something. Like part of the question might include something after 1990, but not the whole thing. Oh, you should be. I don't think you have any trouble. If you do the 1991, I'll fill in some of the blanks at lunch or other things. I'll figure out some way to get you the rest. I don't think you have any trouble. I really don't. Yeah, hey, everybody, then I will do 3 days. Monday through Wednesday, I'll come in at lunch. Would you want that?
Yes.
I'll come in at lunch, I'll answer some questions, and then that's it. I don't want to do it on Thursday.
Monday through Wednesday?
Yeah, Monday through Wednesday.
Friday at 5 a.m.
Actually, before I answer any questions, there's one more little piece of advice. 7:45, you have to be there. What time should you get up? 7:40. No. Actually, I'm very serious about this. Obviously, go to bed relatively early, but get up a couple hours before. I'm not kidding. Get up a little before. Well, 5:45. Get up before. And another thing I'm serious about, and this really does work, especially if you're one of those people who gets a little test anxiety issue, and everybody has different degrees of this. Go do something physical in the morning. Go take a walk. Don't give me that look. Just go take a walk. Get a wild walk. It helps. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. Walk there. Okay, questions. Here we go. Questions. Page 7, Nat Turner's Rebellion. You should know this after your walk. How far are you going to walk? 3 miles? 2.5. Would you walk 2 miles? Actually, I'm not kidding. That does help. I'm not kidding. All right. So, Nat Turner's Rebellion, 1831. And Nat Turner's Rebellion was a slave rebellion in Virginia. Nat Turner was a household help who had been like mini slaves who he taught to learn and read and write. And 50 in Virginia, 50 whites would be killed
over 200 slaves would be killed or executed afterwards, including Turner. And the big thing about Nat Turner was this terrified the South because they were convinced that Nat Turner was being led or convinced to revolt because of abolitionists. Abolitionist materials. No coincidence that the first abolitionist newspaper, the Liberator, right below, William Lord Garrison's newspaper, was 1831. And so they were convinced. And so this would lead to more strict slave codes, especially about reading and writing and how many slaves can meet at one place together. But not just slaves, any blacks, freed or slaves, and also to reorganize the militia. The biggest fear of slaveholders was slave rebellion. Remember, everything always comes back to that fear of slave rebellion. Nat Turner seemed to be it. So they would censor the press, do all kinds of stuff. Okay, Taylor.
Was the thinking then similar to like the Truman Doctrine of the South, that the North was?
Yeah, actually, that is the same kind of, very simplistic look at it. The slaves obviously loved slavery, so somebody else must be doing it. That's actually a really good analogy. I've never thought of that because that works out really well. Blame everything on Northern abolitionists, and that gets everyone to John Brown myself. Good idea. That's a good.
Page 17, 1960, Warren Court.
Page 17, 1960s, the Warren Court. Okay, the Warren Court was, Earl Warren was the, good job, dude. That's a good question. I was actually going to do this. He's already, that's the only one he doesn't have done. Right, David? That's the only one you don't have, right?
So much done.
The Warren Court, okay, the Warren Court was the most pro-civil rights court in American history. And even though they're best known for Browden versus Topeka Board of Education, which I assume all of you know, there are other cases we have to get that very much have to do with civil or equal rights. So Engel versus Vitale, that's that there'd be no enforced prayer in school. The Vitale decision. There can still be prayer in school. I mean, you could pray right now that the test was already done. But it just means that they can't come up, okay, let us all pray. That can't happen in school. Baker versus Carr, it said that it's about redistricting legislative districts. And basically what it meant is they have to be done in a fair and practical way. It tried to limit gerrymandering, which is to create these weird districts to try to ice certain people out. Gerrymandering, which is kind of what it is right now. Gideon versus Wainwright said that everybody has the right to, everybody in a criminal case has a right to an attorney. That wasn't the way it was before, but Gideon, because Gideon was a man who was arrested and guilty because he didn't have a lawyer. And then the Miranda decision, Miranda versus Arizona, said that everybody, if they're arrested, must be made aware of their rights. That is part of habeas corpus. They must be made aware. And they don't have to do it, but that's why now they all, the freedom of rights you've seen on every television show, that came from the Miranda decision. Basically what it says is now we have, we know we do that. So you are aware of your rights. And lastly, Griswold versus Connecticut. And Griswold versus Connecticut is one of the most important civil rights rulings that allowed for, or they said that there can be no restrictions on birth control. Very important for women's rights. And, and the reason why is because of privacy. Women have an inherent right to privacy just as anybody else. And the main thing about birth control is, just to say real quick, birth control, with that ability, then therefore women can have significantly more equality. Because they now control when and how they'll become parents, and therefore will not have to be reliant upon men. There's no coincidence that with birth control, more women enter the workplace. Yes?
Page 5, paragraph 15.
This is amazing. We go from the 1960s, and what's weird is, in that AP Euro in front, we're going through the Renaissance, and then back to this, and whew. Air of good feeling. Okay, page 5, 1816 to 1924. Basically what that was is that is that what you asked?
Yeah, you just said 1860 to 19.
Yeah, okay, so for 108 years, there's basically only the Republican Party. The Federalist Party was dead. In fact, Monroe would win essentially a unanimous victory in 1820. And the big thing was, yes, there's only one party, but it hid the real divide because of the Industrial Revolution and sectionalism over slavery. And so there was a divide coming. So the party would break up over democracy and sectionalism. AKA the Democratic Party in Jackson, and then the Missouri Compromise showed, ooh, things are really divided. Is there another one? Come on, Anna, you have one.
The one right under it.
That's a great question. I was hoping you would ask that. The Adams-Onis Treaty. The Adams-Onis Treaty was a treaty with Spain to give the United States Florida. And it started basically because Andrew Jackson just invaded Florida on his own, looking for runaway slaves, starting the first Seminole War. And so Jackson invaded part of Florida, and so kind of Spain had really no choice. Jackson's an interesting man. Talk about a guy you want to love. Parts of it he's awesome, and part of it he's one of the worst men ever lived. That makes him great. Yes.
Same page, the corrupt bargain.
You guys are working in cahoots. Okay, the corrupt bargain, as we well know, Thomas Jefferson would die in 1826, so it wasn't involving Jefferson at all. And I have no idea why you made me write Jefferson in there. It should say Jackson. Someone at lunch found that out for me, and I'm very sorry about that. It should say Jackson. The corrupt bargain was this. In a four-way contested election in 1824, it went to the House of Representatives. And Henry Clay, through his formidable support to John Quincy Adams. So Adams defeated Andrew Jackson for the presidency. And then Adams turned around and gave Henry Clay Secretary of State, which seemed like picking his successor. So Jackson supporters called it a corrupt bargain. And that would pretty much ruin the Adams administration. I gotta make that change. Yes?
1812 to 1814, treaty against, I think it's. Yeah.
Oh, okay, the War of 1812 and the treaty again. Do you need this treaty again?
Yeah.
The treaty again just ended the war. And it was a status quo antebellum treaty, meaning it went back to the way it was before the war. So essentially a draw. But to the American point of view, it felt like America won the war, especially since the Battle of New Orleans happened. It was a big victory, even though it happened after the treaty was signed. It felt like we won, so it's a very nationalistic victory. You know, I don't know if there'll be a question on the War of 1812. You know, the big thing is, you know, just so long as you know about, you know, territory and neutrality rights, and a couple basic things, humiliation, the capital being burned. Yeah.
Annapolis Convention, page 3.
Annapolis Convention, page 3. So that should be, if you look down near the bottom, 1787, in fact, it is at the bottom. And that was held after the Mount Vernon conference the year before. And both Mount Vernon and Annapolis got together because the realization was they have to strengthen the Articles of Confederation, strengthen the federal government. The Articles were too weak. So there's going to have to be something to strengthen it. And the reason we put that in there is these were the elite coming together saying there's too much democracy in the Articles. Too much democracy. And then Shays' Rebellion would happen, the realization that we gotta have a stronger. Yes?
What are the Sussex resolves on that same page? It's the second part of the first option.
The Sussex resolves were actually done by, it started in the Massachusetts Assembly when they were dissolved with the coercive acts. So everyone found out the Sussex resolves. And basically the first Continental Congress endorsed these. And what it basically said is that I'm trying to remember the exact part. They would start a militia, a continental militia,
and also resolved that they would, something, oh, I got the words out of my head, they had to pop in. They resolved they would rather die as freemen than to live as slaves. And the big thing about dying as freemen to live as slaves, they're saying that British policy is making them slaves. So we must fight for freedom. It's not same revolution yet, but it's that first step. And the other thing about that the first Continental Congress, they did send the olive branch petition to Britain saying, we can still go back. We can still not have war. And the king ignored it. Oh no, that's the second one. My fault. I lied. I'm sorry, I got it confused. That's the second Continental Congress, and I wrote it down there. Please don't get mad at me. I'm old. Yes.
Page 4, 1793, quasi-war.
And that was a war between the United States, quasi-war, it's a third from the bottom. And that was a, quasi means like small, and it was an undeclared war between the United States and France. And it was purely a naval war. And it was fought over French corsairs or French pirates capturing American-owned merchant vessels. And there was a lot of Republican opposition to this war. And that would lead to, as you see right below it, should be there, the Virginia-Kentucky resolutions and the Alien and Sedition Act, because they complained about the war. Is there another one? Yes.
Page 1, 670,
Oh, page 1. That's the first we've had for page 1 today. The middle colonies, and we're basically talking from Pennsylvania down to North Carolina. But these colonies, these middle colonies would be much more, for the most part, commercial colonies. And they were called and they were proprietary colonies, basically owned by one person. And they're called restoration because they were done after Cromwell was removed from Britain and the crown was restored. So middle colonies, much more commercial. Yes, Grace.
Reasons
Ooh, 1492, reasons Europeans explored. Okay, they're on the top, and who knows what kind of question this will be, but the reasons Europeans explored, the biggest reasons were this: massive technological changes, and that's why I have that other just to remind you of that. Technology, like say the compass, new ships, better maps, so technological changes. But also a brand new, basically new system of government where you have now, instead of kind of a feudal states, you have strong nation states. And nation states with powerful kings who will be strong enough to explore and also try to make money on their own. And another big reason was that there was a big change in Christianity, a big change, where the ideology of Christianity changed to allowing for greed. Greed became okay. You can still go to heaven. In fact, if you're rich, that proves that God loves you. And so it switched. And so it became okay to accumulate wealth. And so why not get this? And then also that would be then to spread Christianity. But then the last big reason Europeans explored was trade. The whole reason it started was to open up trade routes to the east. And then once they got the New World, trade exploded worldwide. The first globalization. So that's a lot of stuff. Yes?
What are nation states?
Nation state, basically nation state is what we now today think of as a state. A modern state with one seat of government, and then one ruling body, might be a king or
a small group of people, but one powerful leader in charge makes the laws for the entire state. Instead of, before it was basically little feudal little kingdoms all pledging loyalty to a king, switch back and forth. So the US is a nation state. Yes.
What's the New France Dutch?
New French, and all we need to know about that is New France would be in Canada and then along the Mississippi River, and not that many French came. Not that many French colonists. And because of that, they had better relations with the American Indians there, much better, because they weren't taking as much land. But they would be in direct competition with the English. The Dutch, in the early 1700s, they too would try to colonize the New World, and they colonized in what's called New Amsterdam, which is today New York. And they colonized there and along the Hudson, but eventually they would lose to Britain in a war, and Britain would take it, literally just take it. So you have Dutch settlers and French settlers there too. They're not allowed. Dick.
Page 6.
Wait a minute, I thought you were already through page 19. You lied to us. Which one again?
1830s, Indian Removal Act, and all the other ones.
And all the other stuff?
Yeah.
1830s Indian Removal Act. And the Indian Removal Act would be signed by President Jackson. And that would basically allow for southeastern tribes, but eventually all tribes, but southeastern at first, that would allow states to remove them, and it would set up Indian Territory, which is present-day Oklahoma and Kansas. And so they would be moved to there. And Jackson supported this, not only because he wanted to open up southeastern land for farmers, so get rid of them, but also because he believed that if Indians aren't removed, they will all be killed. So they must be removed, which is a very weird thing. Don't bother. Don't worry about whose land is whose. That was his name. You're going to all be killed, so you better move. And of course, Indians, the states that were the ones that have to do it. And Georgia wanted to remove the Cherokee. And what happened was the Cherokees tried to resist. And two very important court cases would come out of this. Worcester versus Georgia and Cherokee versus the US. And Worcester versus Georgia said that the tribes did not have to obey state law. They're called domestic dependent nations. They signed a treaty, so they have their own law. And the same thing with Cherokee versus the United States. They signed a treaty. So they are entitled to their law of this land. But that doesn't matter. Jackson made it clear, sure, that's federal government, but Georgia's moving. So Georgia can do it. And so that would lead to Indian removal. The best known would be the Trail of Tears, which would happen actually during Van Buren's administration, but that's when the Cherokees would forcibly remove to Indian Territory, and as much as 40% died along the way. It's kind of hard, I have to go down very quickly. A lot of stuff, I leave a lot of space. Once you aren't exact. You got broad shoulder your time. Any others? Yes.
The same page is Adam Smith.
Adam Smith. I can't find him. Oh, because he's on the other side. He's on page 6. Adam Smith is considered to be the first economist, and he would write in 1776 his book, Wealth of Nations, where he probably stole it from people, but came up with this idea of he basically set up the basis of an idea of a free market, or something as close to a free market as possible. And in it, Adam Smith said that mercantilism and government controlling the economy is very bad. And ideally, the best kind of a system is with the least amount of government interference, which is that laissez-faire. The only problem is, Adam Smith also acknowledged that in a market, because of economies of scale, remember that one? The biggest have a competitive advantage. So government does have a role to try to ensure equality. but most people just got to laissez-faire and quit reading. And this would set up the basis of capitalism, modern capitalism. The idea being a free market, let entrepreneurs create and they'll come up with capital. And those who own the capital will be called the capitalists, and they will be very distinct from labor. Capitalized means production, labor, all they get is wages. Yes?
So you only came with the invisible hand.
Yeah, he's the invisible hand. In a perfect world, the invisible hand of the marketplace, thank you for saying that, that's a good point. The invisible hand of the marketplace will decide the right price and the right supply. The only problem is there's never been a perfect market in the history of the world. Yes?
1794 whiskey.
The Whiskey Rebellion, and that was a direct result in 1794, so we're looking in the middle of page 4. And that was the direct result of an excise tax on whiskey for the Assumption Bill. The Assumption Bill that goes up to pay off U.S. debts in 1790. Everyone see what, look above and see that? And this was part of Hamilton's idea, basically, to crush these small farmers. And so small farmers in Western Pennsylvania, it wasn't like a true revolt as we think of, but they said they would not pay this tax. And what happened is now with a strong federal government with the Constitution, President Washington himself rode at the head of a 10,000-man militia army with Hamilton riding right next to him as his adjutant to stop and force him to pay the taxes. It's called a rebellion, but it's not really a rebellion as we would think about it. And so what it shows is now after the Constitution, the U.S. government is strong. And they can enforce taxes on poor folk now. They're going to have to pay. And that relates directly up to the debt, bus, and tariff debate.
And was that garden farmers or just like who rebelled?
Mostly Western Pennsylvania. There were others that were mad, but Western Pennsylvania, they just simply said, we're not going to pay them. And they ran the tax collectors out of their villages and towns. Any others? Are we just a couple more? Sound good? I'm about done. I'm tired. I know you want to go on forever. There's no off switch for you people. Yes?
Can you do that in Gettysburg and Vicksburg?
I can. Any other questions? Gettysburg and Vicksburg! Yay! Did you say Gettysburg and Vicksburg? Because we didn't, you watched that video on it.
Oh, yeah.
I was looking for it on this Bible thing.
Okay, so the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863. I forgot that one on my movie worksheet. What?
Nothing. Nothing. I'm good.
Thank you. That would be a decisive defeat against Lee's invasion force in 1863 by General Meade, commander of the Union Army in 1863. And the big thing was it made sure that the South could never again invade and threaten the North again like this. So this was a decisive victory. And after the Gettysburg Address, that's when Lincoln would give, do I have the Gettysburg Address on here? Ooh, I didn't give you any room, I'm sorry. I blame society. Dedication of the cemetery in November, Lincoln would give the Gettysburg Address, where he laid out the reason for the war, the reason for this sacrifice, that the war is worth the sacrifice to finish what the founding fathers started and create a country based upon equality. So to finish what the founders wanted. And if we don't have this country founded upon equality, based upon equality, then we have led every one of these people in Gettysburg who died all the way to the beginning. So we laid it out. So more than just union, it is a union for a greater thing, equality. And that came out of Gettysburg. Vicksburg was the fortress city on the Mississippi River. Part of the reason Lee invaded for Gettysburg was to take pressure off it. And the Union Army under Ulysses S. Grant took Vicksburg July 4th, 1863. And this cut the Confederacy in half. and the Union got the Mississippi River, and once again made sure the only chance Confederates have is just hold out to that election in '64. So 2 huge victories. Any others? One more. Grace. Not a good one. And Wilmot Proviso, is that page 8? 7. Well, at least in the South. Top of that, and the Wilmot Proviso was done during the Mexican War, and it was done, Wilmot was from Pennsylvania, and what it said was no slavery in any territory the U.S. would get from Mexico. So any Mexican cession, no slavery. And it passed the House over and over and over again, but failed in the Senate. And so Wilmot became the biggest issue of 1848, and this terrified Southerners. Wilmot was going to be, you know, they thought the cause of war. That's why they so went nuts over California, or the Compromise 1850. They're already radicalized. Are we good? You want to quit? I will meet at lunch. I'll go over anything else you guys want to go through. Huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sound good?
I'll be there. We'll be there Wednesday.
And the yahoos who didn't come, I'm annoyed at. But I did record it. I understand they couldn't, but I'm still. Did you get a lot down? And the thing about it is, if you have to do like this, like Tristan, just tell me what you got on this. I'll do it. What's that question? I'll do it Tuesday and Wednesday too. Just remind me to take the rocket seat back and slide over. Whatever you want to do. Either way is fine. Yeah, how much it is? Just go to my webpage. Go to APUSH history, the review page. It has all kinds of information.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to Missoula after fifth period to do a competition.
Oh, cool. Great. Gosh.
But
What kind of martial art?
well, I do Wing Chun and also called Fusion training.
God, you know, I've heard of Wing Chun. I don't know anything about it. What is it? Where is it?
It's from parts of Korea and
Oh, cool.
Okinawa. My teacher, he was born in Okinawa, Japan.
Sure. Okay.
So I guess he learned from 3 different masters: Chinese, Japanese.
That's really cool.
So,
Yeah, a guy who was next door to me was in college. He was a black belt in 4 different things. And I just always was so impressed, such an athletic man. These guys just took out a rock and break it. He went through pain training.
oh yeah.
You hit me. You hit him with anything.
Well, I heard.
You don't want to do pain training.
No, I don't want to. I heard there was someone shouting. I don't know.
That is really crazy.
My teachers.
Oh my God. That's awesome. That's really cool. That's amazing. Yeah, that's good. Now purple belt, that's right. Yeah. Cool. Good for you.
Is the test the test is Friday?
Yeah, it is Friday. And then, comes up that. Not a big deal. Yeah, which is great. See ya. Yeah, and then we're done, right?
Thank you.
You bet. We'll see ya.